I've got another Tom Hanks movie review for you.
Oh, goody. Wonderful. Everyone's favorite darling of the deep state, Tom Hanks.
This is why people listen to our show, right? Is to hear Christine's cool Tom Hanks opinions.
I think so. I mean, you're the social guru, so you would know.
We got Apple TV recently. We're stealing a family member's access.
All right, there you go. The real pro way to watch it.
That's what we're doing. Well, first off, we watched Ted Lasso on there. If you ever get a hold of Apple TV, that's a very good show. It's got Jason Sudeikis. Sudeikis? Is that his name?
I'm struggling to remember who that is face-wise.
He's in... Have you seen We're the Millers?
Yeah. Oh, that guy. Okay.
Yeah.
The main guy in that?
Yeah. He's in it. It's really... It, like, manages to be funny and sweet at the same time, which is, like, really hard to do. Like, it's not, like... It's not too sappy, but it's really wholesome.
Okay.
But also funny.
What is it called?
Ted Lasso.
Ted Lasso. Got it.
But no, what I want to tell you about was a Tom Hanks movie called Greyhound. Have you heard of this movie?
No.
Well, my review is Tom Hanks tries to eat breakfast and can't. Which, if you knew what this movie was about, would be very funny. It's actually about, like, in World War II, he's escorting, like, these boats, like these supply boats across the Atlantic.
Okay.
And, like, there's these U-boats, and they, like, keep getting attacked by U-boats.
Like, while he's trying to eat breakfast, or?
I'm telling you, not once, not twice, not 3 times, 4 times somebody brings him breakfast, and every fucking time we're like, he's not going to get to it. And then that's when someone's like, Captain, we see him. This poor man just can't eat his eggs.
I mean, you don't know how often they're eating eggs, though, in the Navy. Maybe it's often.
Maybe that's all they eat.
All the rations they got.
But it's fun because the breakfasts keep getting bigger because, like, this guy's been awake for like 4 days, and they're just like, you need to fucking eat something. Like, I was like, is the end of this movie just him passing out from not eating? Like, what's gonna happen?
Yeah, he just flatlines.
Yeah, it was pretty good. It was really just various boat maneuvers. I give it a B-.
Wow. Yeah, gotta be honest. If it's mostly boating, mostly naval warfare, I'm not like a big war movie person or war history person, and naval combat for some reason to me like ranks lower than land combat in terms of excitement, and both of them rank lower than air combat. I mean, because that's just Rogue Squadron but low tech, you know.
Yeah, it was kind of interesting. Like, they very clearly were trying to make it like visually engaging. Like, they had to label ships, like, because he would be using his binoculars and they had to be like, this is the whatever. And I'm like, I guess, how else would you fucking know what's going on?
That's interesting.
It was fine. I was worried about his food.
Someone had to be.
It's just that they used it 4 times. You know, it'd be one thing if he got interrupted twice, be like, oh man, that's enough to show he's not eating. Mm-hmm. But the fact that they kept doing it, it's like, now this is a plot line.
But don't be too disappointed. I mean, like, they were probably powdered eggs, you know?
No, they looked good. He had like a ham steak that was like 1/2 inch thick. It looked good.
Yeah. I mean, ham steak, that's a good thing to put on a ship, though, because it's salted, you know? It's they don't have a ton of room on those things.
All right. What are you teaching me today?
All right. Today, we are going to talk about one of the most important figures in 20th century communism.
Who's that?
This would be Mao Zedong.
All right, I've heard of this guy.
Very famous.
Mm-hmm. He's got like a cool jacket.
He's got a cool jacket. Yeah. Oh, he's got the button up all the way tunic thing.
I think that was a crossword clue recently.
Oh, maybe it has a name. I don't know. Now I'm gonna Google that.
Mao jacket. I think it was, because I was like, I didn't think it was that cool of a jacket. I mean, it's a nice jacket.
Yeah, the Wikipedia page is titled Mao suit.
Mao suit.
The modern Chinese tunic suit.
World leader with a distinctive jacket. That was one of the crossword clues recently.
Well, there you go. If you don't know him for his communism, you can know him for his attire. Fashionista. Similar to our other bio episodes, we talked about Emma Goldman, Che Guevara, Vladimir Lenin. We're going to be focusing on Mao Zedong's life, and we'll kind of only briefly dive into a shallow dive into the historical events that he lived through, kind of to give context.
Yeah.
So there's going to be a ton of history that's going to be glossed over, barely discussed. That's okay. Hopefully this is kind of an episode starter of an episode, you know. With that said, stop me when I just breeze past something that you have questions about, you know?
I mean, it probably will happen. I know very embarrassing little Chinese history. It was one of those things that, like, I don't know, just the way history is taught in the States is you mention it twice, like this dynasty in world history. Like you learn about like 2 dynasties and that's it.
Yeah.
And then you never really talk about it again.
100%. You and I can tell you the rundown of the how it gets played in high school world history is it's talked about in ancient, right? It's like the Han Empire or something with the Romans. And then you got some of the dynasties, right? And then you really don't, it's not visited again until like you have the opium, or like the British and the opium trade or something. Or you have later on in World War II, they bring it up and say like, oh, you know, that was one of the theaters and the Japanese were expanding there. And then it's, you know, Truman lost them to the communists. And then they're red and it's done.
Yeah, we never talk about it again.
So we're going to dive a little bit more into certain parts of that. Listeners will probably have questions where you do, so feel free to jump in and ask that, or I'll get too lectury.
Okay.
And overall, we're going to be tracing Mao's early life, his revolutionary actions, his role in the Chinese Civil War, and his role and up to the beginning of the People's Republic of China, where he'll actually take a leadership role.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, there's just a ton. So
we got to do a 2-parter. It's fine.
Yeah, along the way, we'll mostly be focusing on his actions. We'll talk a little bit about his ideological developments, too. But it's not going to be a deep dive into, like, Maoism or Mao Zedong thought.
Okay.
And I also kind of wanted to give a little word about our ideological stance. You and I think we're pretty good about this, trying to be more or less open-minded about tendencies and stuff, right? We're not like, oh, I'm a hardcore Marxist-Leninist or Trotskyist or whatever, right?
Yeah, no.
We're not here... I don't want this episode to be like, here's why Mao sucks, you know?
I kind of doubted that.
Or we also don't want to be like, this is Mao. He's the, you know, patron saint of the podcast now. We're going to be, you know, talking about only some of the things he did. We're going to be including, you know, good things. But also, nobody's perfect. We're going to include some bad things too.
Okay, that's fine.
So yeah. Also, don't be surprised. Most of our listeners shouldn't be, but if it's your first time tuning in, don't be surprised if this is different than the standard account you get from Mao in a Western education.
Yeah, shocking.
On the other hand, don't expect us to be like a communist subreddit about Mao either. It's not necessarily going to be 100%. Either way, it's not balance for balance sake, I guess, but it's just people are nuanced.
Yeah.
All right, let's start from the top.
All right.
Mao was born on December 26, 1893.
Okay.
So, long time ago. In Shaoshan, in the Hunan province of the Qing Empire of China.
Right.
So, you can already tell, long time ago, and China was an empire back then.
Yeah, that'd be a while back.
His father was Mao Yichang, a wealthy landowning farmer. He was a grain merchant. He'd grown up poor, but like sort of bootstrapped his way up. Made his own way in the world. He's described as a strict disciplinarian who made liberal use of corporal punishment. So very strict dude.
Where about, I guess, geographically in China is this? Just like, I'm very visual.
So Hunan is landlocked in like southern China.
Okay.
So, you know, the big curve part is sort of in there.
Okay.
That's a dumb way to describe it, but
it worked.
It's landlocked so it's not on the coast and it's there. Okay.
Okay, cool.
His mother was named Wen Qimei.
Okay.
She had grown up poor as well and had, along with her mother, fled an abusive father at age 10.
Oh, dang.
She was arranged to marry Mao Yichang when she was 13 and he was 10, and they married 5 years later when she was 18. And I guess he was 15.
Okay.
You know.
Okay, wow.
She's described as a devout Buddhist.
Okay.
I mean, neither one has like a book dedicated to them, so you only get like a sentence or two.
Yeah.
Mao Zedong himself grew up fairly well-to-do. He had 2 younger brothers, Zemin and Zetan. And they also lived with a cousin of theirs, Zhejiang.
Okay.
All of his siblings end up getting executed later in
Whoa.
the story at different times, either by warlords or by the Kuomintang, who we'll talk about later during the Chinese Civil War.
All right, it's a hell of a spoiler.
Yeah. It's when you're watching the movie and you know, oh, damn, they're going to die, and you're watching them play.
Yeah.
Sad. There's not a ton else on Mao's childhood that's nearly as important. One highlight is that when he's either 13 or 14, the sources differ, his father arranges a marriage for him to the 17 or 18-year-old Luo Yixiu.
Okay.
They do marry in 1908 when she is 18, but Mao hated this. He hated the arranged marriage situation overall. He reluctantly took part in the ceremony and then apparently refused to live with Luo.
Whoops.
And ran away from home.
Dang, okay.
So she lived with the Mao family and was disgraced by his disappearance. She dies 2 years later from dysentery.
Whoa.
And Mao returns home. He's kind of forgiven, prodigal son sort of situation.
Ooh, man, that's awkward.
Yeah, the whole episode is said to have made Mao a vehement advocate of women's rights and a fierce opponent of arranged marriage.
Okay. I mean, shitty way to get there, but okay.
Yeah. And so he's 18 when he's shipped off to school in Changsha, the capital of the Hunan province.
Okay.
So he's in school there in 1911 when a revolution breaks out. It's called the 1911 Revolution.
Classic.
It's also called the Xinhai Revolution, so you can go with the cooler name if you want.
Yeah.
The short story here is that there's this armed rebellion that breaks out against the terribly mismanaged Qing Empire.
Okay.
They overthrow it in 4 months. That's how terribly managed.
Damn, yeah, pretty bad empire.
And it's replaced by the Republic of China. And pretty quickly, the Republic of China also struggles.
Okay.
It goes off the rails. There's a lot of complicated stuff that happens, but the government ends up descending into what's called the warlord era.
Okay, this sounds like a bad era.
Yeah, it's not very good. A bunch of different regional warlords control little chunks of the country, and they fight each other.
Ugh, and what year is this?
This is in 1911, and that lasts through the 20s.
Can you imagine having warlords? I mean, we have them now, I guess, but it's just a very antiquated kind of term, you know?
Yeah, that's what they had to live through.
Jeez.
Mao, for his part, he supported the revolution. He joined as a soldier.
Wow.
But doesn't end up seeing any fighting. I guess it only lasted 4 months, so by the time he's got a gun and stuff.
Yeah, by the time he's trained, it's
So he ends up resigning 6 months after 6 months because it's already over by then. And it's during this time that he discovers a little something called socialism.
That's my favorite thing.
He ends up reading some newspaper articles about it basically and is like, what? And he reads some pamphlets by some guy named Jiang Kanghu, who's the founder of the Chinese Socialist Party.
Okay.
Which is a pretty minor thing.
Okay.
This was just kind of an intro to socialism for Mao, and he wasn't bought in yet. He was like, that's kind of cool, I guess. He was still young, figuring it out.
Yeah.
And definitely figuring it out. After that, he dabbles a bunch. He enrolls in and drops out of a bunch of different things.
Okay.
Here's our list. Starting out real weird. A police academy.
Whoa, didn't see that one coming, but okay.
Yeah. A soap production school.
Very specific.
Yeah. A law school.
All right.
An economics school.
Okay, maybe.
And a middle school, which I think is kind of more like our high school, terminology-wise.
Just trying to find himself.
Yeah, he's all over the place. He ends up studying philosophy and economics kind of independently, but he's just so aimless that his father ends up cutting off his allowance, and he's got to move into a hostel for broke people.
Dang. All ends eventually.
Yeah, so he gets cut off, and then in 1913... he ends up enrolling in a teacher's training college, somehow. To me, that was questionable because, what has he done? I don't know, but that was fine, I guess.
I guess, yeah.
It was called the Hunan First Normal School.
I mean, sounds normal.
Well, here he falls prey to the classic villain in the minds of all American conservatives.
Ooh, who is it?
The radical college professor.
Hell yeah. Love those guys.
So the guy in question is Yang Changji, who ends up becoming young Mao's mentor and posthumously his father-in-law.
Oh, okay.
This is where we get our first personal life break. We're going to have several of these personal life breaks to talk about kind of his relationships and stuff. Because Yang ends up important to him, like we said, posthumous father-in-law. It's on a visit to his house that he meets his future wife, Yang Kai-hui.
Ooh, okay.
He was apparently too shy to talk to her the first time they met.
Oh, cutie.
Yeah. Professor Yang also points Mao to the New Youth magazine. Says this is a cool magazine, check it out.
Okay. Gives him some literature.
Yeah, this was a radical publication. And it started the New Culture movement.
Okay, what is that?
So, yeah. So the New Youth magazine, this was created by a guy named Chen Duxiu.
Okay.
Who was a revolutionary in that 1911 revolution.
Yes.
And he's a future co-founder of the Communist Party of China.
Nice.
The magazine New Youth argued that China had to modernize. It had to reform its society with Western ideas like democracy, egalitarianism, women's rights, and it had to challenge kind of the old Confucian thinking.
Okay.
To be able to move into the modern world, basically. And this is at the heart of that new culture movement. Rebel against the old, begin anew, build a new, better China sort of thing.
I mean, I like all of those things they listed. I just don't know enough about Confucianism to know whether I'd be against that, you know?
You probably would. Confucianism is pretty traditional in its outlook.
Yeah.
It says that, the wise should govern, and this is super condensed, but it's a nuanced philosophy. I don't want to paint it in a terrible way, but it kind of has, it definitely got a belief in hierarchy.
Yeah.
And it's got a set of obligations each way. It's not like just listen to who's in charge, but the people in charge should be doing things for people below them. But it is very hierarchical.
Okay, yeah, probably would not be into that.
Mao actually published his first article in the New Youth magazine.
There we go. What was it about?
It was in April 1917, and it was called A Study of Physical Education.
Okay. This guy, he's just all over the place.
Yeah, because in it, he basically tells readers that they need to buff up to get ready to fight in the revolution to come.
That's hilarious.
And he's just like, when you fight, man, when you train, like, you got to be savage. You got to be ready. You got to be intense.
Oh my gosh.
It's very funny it's pretty short. I linked it in the notes. It's a funny read because it's
just like, you just imagine this little fast.
Student. Yeah. So back to school. Mao is a popular student, active in school politics. In 1917, he is elected to a position that is startling to most people who attend college or school these days. Is he was elected commander of the students' volunteer army.
Whoa.
Remember, he's going to school during the warlord era.
Yeah, I guess these guys have to have one.
Yeah, they led the defense of the school from marauding warlord soldiers and bandits.
Wow, this is some Harry Potter Book 7 shit right here.
Yeah. They used makeshift bamboo spears and wooden rifles.
Damn, okay.
I guess to scare people off.
It's insane.
Yeah. He ends up graduating in June 1919, ranked third in his class. Nerd.
Buff nerd.
Yeah,
oh, what if he wasn't buff, though, and he was just, like, pretending?
I mean, it was just published in unless they took pictures, like he was also the centerfold of it.
Be buff like me.
So from there, he moves to Beijing.
Okay.
The reason is that his mentor, the professor, Yang Chengxi, had gotten a job at Peking University.
Oh, okay.
And he was cool enough to get Mao a job as an assistant to the university librarian.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah. So Peking University was a hotbed of radicalism at the time, okay?
Ooh.
That librarian was the future co-founder of the Communist Party of China, along with the guy who wrote the book.
Wonderful.
Who wrote the magazine, sorry. And that guy, Chen Duxiu, was the dean of the school.
Damn, okay. This is commie school right here.
Yeah, and I think the president of that school was also like an anarchist or something. Like, it was crazy.
That's cool as hell. I'd go to that school. That sounds amazing.
Yeah.
I wouldn't go because there's a whole warlord situation, but without that, I'd go.
All right. Well, just don't serve on the student volunteer army. You know?
Yeah, I'll stay out of that.
So overall, Mao described, kind of retrospectively, described his ideology at this time as, quote, a curious mixture of ideas of liberalism, democratic reformism, and utopian socialism.
I mean, we've all been in our 20s at college. That's what that is.
Yeah. He said he was definitely anti-militarist and anti-imperialist, but otherwise kind of like not sold, Overall, though, he starts to move further to the left during this time.
Cool.
I mean, no surprise with the staff
right?
got there, right?
It'd be weird if he didn't.
He joins the librarians' study group.
Okay.
And ends up kind of gravitating toward Marxism.
Nice.
He had kind of dabbled in anarchism a little bit too, but kind of sets that aside. Cool side point here. Mao, during his time at school, was teased for being a hillbilly, basically.
Oh, because he was like from further out?
Yeah, so they made fun of him for his country accent.
Aww.
So I just imagine him, because he would go to lectures and stuff and then want to ask questions, but they just straight up, like, not his professors, but guest speakers, like, they wouldn't talk to him or whatever. They wouldn't answer him.
That's
They'd
so
be
sad.
like, excuse me, what do you think about mobilizing the peasants for doing revolution?
Oh.
They would just be like, whatever.
Bummer, man.
Yeah, total jerks, dude.
Yeah, elitists. They shouldn't be elite. You're at fucking commie school. You should know better.
Well, it was a real school. It wasn't just communist, but okay. So in the spring 1919, he ends up returning home to visit his mom. She was terminally ill.
Oh man.
And she ends up dying later that year. His dad dies the next year, and he soon ends up taking up history, teaching history. Kind of a disreputable profession there, teaching history.
Only assholes do that.
And this was at the kind of like the primary school feeder to his old alma mater there.
Okay.
Or I guess place he had dropped out of.
Yeah.
And it's on May 4th, 1919 that something else happens in China that we'll talk about, the May 4th movement.
Is it about Jedi?
Ah, damn. No, it isn't. Nope. They missed opportunity there. This was, I guess it was anti-imperial.
Okay. Technically accurate.
It was an anti-imperialist movement that grew out of some student protests in Beijing.
Okay.
They were pissed because it's 1919, so the Treaty of Versailles had just been released. It's not been signed yet, but now people know what it's about.
Yeah.
This is the treaty that ended World War I, and it had really fucked over China by turning over territories that had been occupied by Germany. Instead of turning those over to China, they had turned it over to Japan.
Oh, that's shitty.
Yeah. So people were pissed about that. They were just being kicked around. They blamed the government. They started protesting and striking, saying, this is bullshit, reject this treaty.
Yeah.
So it's kind of also, it feeds into that new culture movement, we need to be our own, country, do things for ourselves, that sort of thing. Nationalism. Right?
Yeah.
And it's successful in the sense of like, they do scare the government into saying, okay, fine, we'll reject the treaty. But it's not that successful because like the other countries signed the treaty anyway. They don't really care.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, that sucks.
Yeah.
What territories? Was it just like borders or something?
Yeah, it was mostly on the coastal regions that they had captured. And Mao, during the May 4th movement, he starts organizing some local protests.
Ooh, okay.
He organizes against the governor there, Zhang Jinjiao, who was such a dick that he was known as Zhang the Venomous.
Ooh, yeah, that's a bad one.
Because he would just like steal and plunder and everything. He was an asshole. Anyway, Mao founds the Hunanese Student Association. He organizes student strikes. He starts a radical magazine called the Zhang River Review.
I mean, these are all your basic steps to becoming a radical. Organizing, starting a publication.
Yep.
I was going to say we've all been there, but no, I have not.
All the cool kids have been there.
Yeah.
He started advocating in the magazine for strengthening unions, for waging a nonviolent revolution, and for mutual aid.
Wow. Those are all cool things.
Yeah. The governor, what do you think? He hated that.
I bet, yeah. The venomous, probably not his thing.
So he started shutting down Mao's organization, shutting down his magazine, and Mao, of course, just like made a different magazine till that got shut down. He switched to a newspaper. Eventually that gets shut down too. He's railing about, the fucked up government, saying this sucks, it should be changed. He's also talking about liberating women in Chinese society. And eventually he pisses off the governor enough that he basically gets a price on his head, so he leaves.
Shit. He should have named his magazine something nondescript, be like, I don't know, made covers from his day at the soap factory or something. Yeah. Soap Monthly.
Yeah, and then the governor's like, well, it's just Soap Monthly. Who reads that?
Or it's just like, yay, imperialism, the magazine, But then inside it's like, no, just kidding.
Yes. He ends up moving back to Beijing. He visits his old prof, who is now terminally ill.
Oh, man. Lots of sad parts of this movie so far.
Yeah, so his prof dies, January 1920. So it was back in Beijing that Mao gets exposed to the real deal.
Ooh, the real shit?
The real shit. The Communist Manifesto.
Oh, that original flavor. Shoot it into my veins.
Just hits different. He thought it was good, It was good shit. But he still, at this time, kind of still has some ideas kicking around in his head. He's not, like, committed just yet, but...
it's the first date. You don't want to commit.
Right. Yeah, but he was impressed. And in 1920, during that same year, he's appointed headmaster of a school.
Okay.
So our next personal life break is here, because when he gets that steady job coming in, that winter he ends up marrying Yang Kai-hui.
Nice.
Yang Kai-hui becomes a dedicated communist like Mao does.
Nice.
She ends up joining the party kind of a year later than he does, organizes evening workers' schools at a nearby cotton mill, organizes peasant evening schools as well. Just basically dedicated to the cause.
I mean, get yourself a girl who can do it all.
Yep. And so here's where Mao ends up getting involved with the Communist Party of China.
Okay.
Remember, we already talked about those guys who founded it. Mm-hmm. But I kind of want to talk about how that ends up happening. I'll give you 3 guesses as to the origins of the party. Like, before it was officially the Communist Party of China, what type of group do you think it was?
Was it one of the warlords groups?
Nope.
Okay. Was it a school? There's lots of schools in this.
Nope.
Okay. Was it some farmers?
No.
Okay. I kind of gave up at the end.
It's all right. It was a secret book club / study society.
Oh, God, of course it was.
I mean, this is obviously a thing. We have to do this. We have to start converting our D&D group or something into...
Clearly.
Hey, guys, you want to, read a, just weird book that I found?
You want to read this book? That's really good.
Apparently, right?
Also, I was thinking when you said he was headmaster, imagine if years later you're like, oh yeah, my principal was fucking Mao.
Right?
That'd be crazy.
That would be weird. First time seeing him in a speech, you're like, wait, that guy is...
He yelled at me one time.
So the study society, that was founded in 1920 by these guys.
Okay.
Chen Duxiu, the dean, who wrote the magazine.
Oh, yeah.
And Li Dajiao, who was the librarian guy.
Okay, yeah. And
Mao ends up joining and setting up a branch in Changsha, along with organizing. He's doing a lot at this time. This is in 1920 or 21, not quite sure.
Okay.
He organizes a Russian affairs study group, a Marxism study group, a branch of the Socialist Youth Corps. It's like kind of a young communist sort of thing. And the Cultural Book Society.
Damn, got a lot of meetings. Like, imagine all those Zoom calls. It'd be exhausting.
It's not a lot to do, I guess, besides do these things.
I guess, yeah, you don't have like television, so that's what you do for fun. It's discuss books.
The Cultural Book Society was interesting. It was a nonprofit cooperative bookstore, sort of.
Oh, that's really cool.
It really didn't, it wasn't too much focused on the bookstore part of it. It was mostly focused on making revolutionary literature, available for people.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
So I have a question about, like, I guess the term party, because I think when I think of party, I think of like you're electing people or you're like, you're trying to, or you are represented somehow through government, but like, sounds like the government of China like wasn't really a thing right now. It was just warlords.
So you do technically have a government, an official like republic government that's internationally recognized and stuff. They're just weak as hell.
Okay. So they weren't like trying to send somebody there, were they?
Right. Yeah. Most of the country rather was run by these warlords. And the government really only controlled a small area. It was mostly run by a guy who was in charge of the army. It was shitty.
Yeah. So I guess maybe you're going to get into this, but like what were the goals of the party at this point?
They wanted to organize a proletarian revolution.
Cool.
So,
cool goal.
Yeah. At that time, they wanted to, there are different groups of them. Some of them wanted to do a bourgeois. Well, actually, all of them at the time were orthodox Marxists. Okay. So they said, we got to have a bourgeois revolution, some sort of a democratic, people take the power revolution, a liberal democratic thing, do some capitalism, and then bring about a socialist revolution.
Yeah.
Once we have a big enough, proletarian class.
Okay. That makes sense.
That was their goal. Yeah. By the summer of 1921, there were these small Communist Party groups all over China. So they end up holding a meeting, a big national conference in Shanghai in July.
Cool.
And that's where they're officially, established. They had their kind of unofficial book club with branches, and now they're officially the Communist Party of China.
Nice.
Yeah, they have their first Congress. Mao was there as a delegate from the Hunan province.
Cool. Alrighty.
He's made party secretary for the Hunan province, and he goes on a recruitment drive. It's a bunch of different things that he does. Finds some more ways to kind of spread revolutionary literature. He ends up joining an effort by the YMCA that was there to like increase literacy. And he joins up with them and helps them like edit textbooks into Chinese. But in doing so, he like inserts like more radical kind of sayings and stuff.
That's fantastic. Okay, so like the YMCA.
Yeah.
That's insane.
They were on like mission work there, I guess.
Oh, that's a great plan. Let's start infiltrating mission work.
So yeah, overall, he was trying to get shit done. He was doing that. He was organizing strikes. He was doing things,
Cool.
And it was in 1922, that's, just kind of around that time, that the party decided to make an alliance with another big party in China called the Kuomintang.
Okay, what's their deal?
So the Kuomintang their origins were in the 1911 revolution that replaced the empire with the republic.
Yeah, that one.
One of their leaders was a guy named Sun Yat-sen.
Okay.
He's kind of weird because to this day, he's like revered as sort of a founding father type in both like mainland China and in Taiwan, who don't agree on much.
Interesting. Yeah.
He was the founder of the Kuomintang Party, which is a nationalist group. They advocated his 3 principles of the people.
Okay. Tell me those principles.
Nationalism. So stand up for China sort of thing.
It's not my favorite principle. That's okay. Let's see how the second one hits.
And, it's nationalism from like a country on the other end of imperialism.
Yeah,
so.
It makes sense.
Democracy.
I like that one.
And the welfare of the people.
I like that one a lot.
That one has contentious translations of, the right wingers want to say this is like the livelihood of the people.
Yeah.
And the, more left leaning want to say socialism.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the whole like access to versus providing thing, I feel like.
Yeah. So they kind of have different branches within the Kuomintang or the KMT in terms of interpretation of that. But broadly speaking, they're like Republicans, like, in terms of wanting a republic. They're like nationalists, that sort of thing.
I mean, given where they are, probably a good starting point to join up with them.
Yeah. After the republic, failed and the warlord era started, Sun Yat-sen ends up fleeing the country until 1917. He comes back and he resurrects his party to start to try to take the whole thing back over again and transition it to democracy.
Okay.
But he had no army pretty much to do that. And the West was just like, dude, whatever, we don't care about you. So he ends up turning to the Soviet Union for help, even though he's not like a communist or anything.
Yeah.
And they get it. Training, money, supplies, in exchange for agreeing to work with the Communist Party of China.
Interesting.
And the Soviets tell the CPC, go team up with these guys.
Okay.
All right.
Man, I bet people freaked out about that.
Yeah. They agreed, and they both sides ended up, they worked together. The communists' goal was to try to push the Kuomintang leftward while working with them to try to overthrow, the government and the warlords. And this time period was called the First United Front.
Good name.
Yeah, it's catchy. Cool alliance. We're going to get into some military history, so it'll get a little glossy because I'm focusing on what Mao was doing rather than all the details. So Mao, he was all about this alliance. He ends up doing what they said. He joins the KMT because he wants to help defeat the warlords. He wants to help defeat the imperialists. He's about it.
Sounds great.
So he does that. He has a little bout of sickness in 1824 where he goes back home to kind of recover. And when he does that, he sees that some of the peasantry there has straight up seized the land of the wealthier landowners and started forming communes.
That's great. Love to see it.
Yeah, he thought the same thing, and he was like, cool, peasants can be revolutionary.
Yeah.
This was a big deal. It's not orthodox Marxism. Regular Marxism says peasants, they're just peasants. They can't do it. They can't come to some sort of class consciousness. But he thinks they can. He thinks they can be revolutionary. And so it becomes a big strand of his thought that kind of delineates Maoism from other forms of Marxism.
Okay, cool. I'm for it.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm broadly for it. Yeah, I think why not? Peasants are cool.
Yeah, I think it's kind of elitist to think otherwise. So yeah, I'm down.
Yeah. So Mao, he keeps, doing shit, keeps organizing, keeps helping to build things up to get ready for when they're going to go on their offensive.
Fuck yeah.
And in 1926, after consolidating their power in the South, which is the kind of their power base, I guess, the United Front ends up marching north to fight against the warlords and try to reunify the country. And this is called the Northern Expedition.
How's it go?
Well, it does go well, I guess, but there's it's kind of a downside because before they end up going north in 1925, Sun Yat-sen, the guy who kind of can hold everybody together, dies.
Oh man, that's awkward.
Yeah, his successor is a guy named Chiang Kai-shek.
All right, is he cool? Not cool?
He's not that cool. He's kind of an asshole. He's way more anti-communist.
Fuck, I hate that.
Yeah, so relations between the two camps that are still united start to sour.
Okay, not great.
Yeah. And so here we end up into the meat of the Civil War. Because sure enough, the nationalists, the KMT are the ones who are mainly leading they're the bigger group. They're mainly leading the charge. The communists are going with them, but the Northern Expedition, they end up successful. They end up more or less taking over or establishing themselves a pretty big power base in the north. So they succeed.
Cool.
They haven't 100% like taken over the place yet, but sure enough, things eventually end up splitting because Chiang and the conservative members of the Kuomintang end up carrying out a purge.
Oh, gosh.
So they start getting rid of communist members in leadership, just kicking them out of the party and stuff.
Yeah, okay. So they're not killing them, at least.
Yeah, the word purge, I think I've come to find, is overused when talking about anything in history, but especially kind of communist influence, anything to do with communism, you get purge.
Yeah.
But they carried a purge of them, meaning that he just, kicks them out of the party, kicks them out of leadership. And then he gets to the real purging stuff. He does a straight up massacre.
Okay, that one's bad.
Yeah, called the Shanghai Massacre.
Shit.
April 12, 1927, the nationalists round up and execute anywhere from 5,000 to 10,000 people.
That's a lot of people, even on the low end. Jeez.
Yeah. You'll end up saying that a lot throughout.
Great. Good spoiler to have.
So the Kuomintang end up going on a wider purge of tens of thousands of communists and suspected communists, and so obviously the alliance is over, right? Like,
I would say so.
They're done,
Yeah.
The Soviets are like, what the fuck? And they cut off ties with the Kuomintang.
Yeah.
And so the Chinese Civil War begins. It's long and it's complicated.
Okay. Good summary.
Yeah.
That's your final paper. You didn't study, so you're just like, Chinese Civil War.
It was long and complicated.
Long and complicated. Turn in the blue book. just call this one a wash. Going to take this course again.
That's it. Mao found himself appointed commander-in-chief of the Chinese Workers' and Peasants' Red Army.
Cool title.
Yeah, that was kind of long. They ended up shortening it to the Red Army.
Okay, yeah. Classic.
He gets now to put his idea of revolutionary peasants to the test, and he launches an operation called the Autumn Harvest Uprising.
Very cool name.
It sounds like something from Stardew Valley.
I was about to say, yeah, it sounds very Stardew or Animal Crossing, but also communist, which I'm into.
It's probably what, who is it? Ken? Is that the guy's name? The dad who's off fighting the war? He's probably involved in the
Autumn Harvest
Uprising.
Probably, yeah. Is it Ken or Kent? I think
Kent. It's Kent, yeah. So that's in September 1927. Basically, what he ends up doing is, goes into this area, gets peasants to join him, and take over the place.
Nice.
And sets up the Hunan Soviet.
Sounds great.
It is great for 2 months.
Oh, no. Not a long one.
And then the Kuomintang show up, they swarm in, and Mao's like, fuck, this is too many people, and so they have to retreat.
Oh, that sucks. Okay.
Yeah. So he kind of overstretches himself a little bit. His reward for what they called military opportunism and focusing too much on the peasants was getting kicked out of the Central Committee of the party.
Whoops. Okay.
They said, Mao, you're a dumbass. You did this stupid thing. Get out of here.
Not a good call.
His response was, who fucking cares? We're at war.
Yeah.
So he the article says his response was to ignore them or something. He just, whatever.
Just left it on red.
Yeah. He ends up setting up a base in Jingangshan City.
Okay.
In the Jingang Mountains. And there he ends up kind of consolidating the area that he controls into this self-governing kind of commune state.
Cool.
He's always, in these early days, got this kind of anarchist sort of commune-based thing going on. And I think because it resonates with the peasants, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I mean, he dabbled in that before, so maybe he's just kind of drawing on that knowledge, but that's cool.
Yeah. I couldn't find anything that definitively said, Mao does have an anarchist thinking to him. I was trying to search that too because I saw that he had done anarchist readings, but I couldn't find anything concrete about that.
I wonder if it's just the circumstances of it, he kind of had to.
Yeah, it could be. So he sets up this state. He confiscates land from landlords. He grows his numbers even letting in some bandit groups to join in.
Okay, cool.
Just like, hey man, I'll take whatever I can get, you know?
Yeah, right.
But he lays down strict rules for these guys, and he ends up turning them into an effective fighting force.
Nice. All right.
During the course of the Civil War, we will see Mao develop a strategy of combining mobile warfare, guerrilla warfare, and building up popular support.
Okay.
Into something called a people's war.
I mean, I don't get the difference between mobile and guerrilla, but I'm also not that interested in it.
Okay. Well, for listeners who are, mobile just means you're moving around a lot fast and everything. And then guerrilla warfare is you're thinking like asymmetric warfare, where you strike and you leave before they can get you. Or you're hiding, you set up ambushes and stuff.
Okay. I knew that one, but
you can straight up
like...
stand and fight in mobile warfare. Like, you just run, back and forth and stuff. But you're like standing up in uniform. But guerrilla warfare is talking about like more sneaky tactics.
Okay. I mean, I knew about guerrilla warfare, but I just didn't. I was like, couldn't you also be mobile? And it's fine.
Yeah. That's kind of a nuance, I guess. But this is a huge part of Maoism, is this idea of a people's war. The idea is you get the support from people, right, by doing good shit for them, taking the land from the landlords and giving it to them, setting up communes for them, putting them in charge, right?
Yeah.
And when you got the support of the local people there, and then you go and you mess with the enemy, you hit and run, small groups against big groups, but you draw them away from their supplies towards your home turf that you've already got all the people on your side in.
Okay.
And then you and the people that you've been helping fuck up your enemy.
Sounds great.
Do the best you can to kill them without getting killed, right?
Okay.
Yeah, so it's very asymmetric. It's very good if you are like outmatched.
Yeah, very like wily.
Mm-hmm. And so that's what he's kind of doing in this phase. Next, he kind of suffers some defeats. He ends up retreating southward in January 1929. His army is kind of like dispirited by all this and retreating. So they end up doing some thieving, and the Central Committee, tells him, you guys, your army is bullshit. You guys are just a bunch of like lumpen proletariat criminals, They're not class conscious. They're not real communists. You need to disband them. Mao just like gives him the finger.
Yeah, fuck off, man. Sorry we didn't read your books.
Yeah. He's just like, whatever. No, they're my army. We're continuing to do this.
Yeah.
Personal life break.
All right. Who's up?
In the spring of 1928, Mao met and started a relationship with a lady named He Zizhen.
This is not his wife.
No. Her nickname was cool. It was the Two-Gunned Girl General.
That's a cool fucking name. Man, I'd have an affair with her too. That sounds great.
But yeah, you're right. He was still married to Yang Kai-hui when he married He Zizhen in May 1930.
Whoops, double marriage. Awkward.
Yeah. So when he met He Zizhen, there was also kind of an age gap. I guess it was back in the day. It was 35 and 18. So,
I mean, not great, but what are you going to do?
It was more common back then, maybe.
Yeah.
In October 1930, so a few months after that, I guess, Yang Kai-hui, his
first wife,
was captured by a KMT warlord.
Shit.
Who demanded that she publicly renounce Mao and the Communist Party.
Oh, shit.
She refused, even under torture, telling them, chopping off the head is like the passing of wind. Death could frighten cowards, but not our communists.
Damn, now I feel really bad that you cheated on this lady.
Yeah, she was executed, beheaded.
She's fucking ride or die, literally.
Yeah. Damn. And Mao apparently, is, I guess, complicated guy maybe, but mourned her for the rest of his life.
Oh, man.
So, people are weird.
People are weird.
Back to war.
Back to war, though.
In February 1930, Mao had set up a provisional Soviet government in the region that his forces controlled. It was called the Jiangxi Soviet.
Okay.
But by December, he had kind of pissed off people there, and there was a mutiny against him.
Shit.
And it's complicated. And there aren't great sources on it.
Okay. What did he do to piss him off?
So I'm not very sure what ends up happening. It's just like he makes them mad.
Okay.
They suspected that he was trying to arrest these generals and surrender to the Kuomintang, which he probably was not.
Probably not. That doesn't
But
sound
I
like him.
assumed that he had done something else to make them think that he was doing that.
Okay.
But anyway, it's called the Futian incident,
Okay.
and the details are weird and like unclear. But
Okay.
basically, Mao ends up having his loyalists execute a lot of the people who had done this.
Not great.
Sources disagree about whether they were tortured and executed or just executed.
I mean, still not great either way.
Yeah.
I mean, one's worse, I guess, but still.
Because in one, I saw that basically he called in the people who had been leading the mutiny, said, hey, let's talk this out, and then just murks them in the hall.
Shit. Okay. Not good.
But it's hard to find out how many exactly. And the ranges are from 200 to 3,000. So who knows is pretty much the answer. In any case, like you said, bad.
Still bad. Even if it's 200, that's also very bad. Yeah. Not into that.
Mao even later admitted this was a mistake, but those guys were like already dead. So I mean,
yeah, good. Thanks, I guess.
Yeah. So there was that. I just got to include the good with the bad.
Strike one. Official count.
I prefer fouls, like basketball style, because that you can foul out, but it's more like it takes more, I think, to foul out.
Oh, okay.
I believe.
Copper sat up on the couch and is looking at me, so I don't think he liked that one.
You're being too lenient on him.
He's like, you're telling me he did what?
So in November 1931, the Central Committee moves to where Mao is. Fair weather friends. Now that he's doing good, they're like, oh, hey, can we hang out here, please?
Classic.
You've got such a nice house. And they proclaim it the Chinese Soviet Republic.
Okay, man. Wow, big turnaround.
Yeah. And Mao becomes the head of state and head of government there.
Okay, we're doing this.
So from nada to Prada.
Listeners, this is a reference to a Univision original movie from Prada to Nada. It's very bad and very good. Look it up. I love it.
So the Soviet expanded for a while, eventually controlling an area with a population of 3 million people, which I guess in Chinese terms, not that much.
I guess not, yeah. That's like all of us here.
That's their Wyoming.
Wow.
Mao kept on doing land reform there and kept doing education programs, made sure that women could participate. Good shit.
Sounds great.
But by 1933, the Kuomintang had said basically, we've really got to get rid of all these commies here. Like, what the fuck, So they start mounting encirclement campaigns.
Now, what does that mean? They get him in circles?
Yeah, they try to draw up a circle around him and then, come in and kill him.
Oh, that's not good.
Well, they fail like 4 times.
They're bad at circles. Okay, they kept doing squares.
Yeah, but the 5th one.
Uh-oh.
I feel like Monty Python where it's like, that one burned down, fell over, then second or swamp, but the 4th one.
That one stayed up.
Yeah, but this one's the 5th one. The 5th encirclement campaign, they start building a concrete and barbed wire wall of fire. Not really fire. It's not. There's no fire. But
okay, jeez, that's pretty intense.
A big wall around the Soviet and start bombing it and laying siege to it.
I mean, still bad. Still not great.
The Red Army supply ends up getting low, and they eventually have to evacuate this. From this pretty terrible. We're about to die. Arrangement. So
that sucks. But they were encircled. How the fuck do you evacuate from that?
Wow. They end up having to break through the lines at one place and then book it out of there.
Damn, okay.
Right? This is called the Long March.
This will be a cool part of the movie.
Yeah. This is one of the few things that one of the first things, I guess, that I learned about Mao was that he did the Long March and then ends up being in control of China or whatever. Mm-hmm. So it's a very well-known thing.
Yeah, I feel like I've heard the phrase.
The details aren't really clear. It's just he did, there was the Long March, right?
He did that.
But basically it was a retreat.
Interesting.
They had to get the fuck out of the encirclement, right? Mm-hmm. So that they didn't, die. And they start with around 100,000 troops. In October 1934, they break through the Kuomintang line. And like I said, they just hoof it west.
Leave. Okay.
because they have to get around this like big encirclement that has been being built there. Along the way, Mao kind of regains his position within the party. Like he kind of regains his stature. Neat. I'm really trying to live right now. And they're being pursued and attacked by the nationalist armies and their allies all the way across.
Okay.
They eventually do make it more than 5,600 miles.
Oh my God.
West and north. It takes them more than a year, 370 days, to end up meeting up with the other red armies that exist in China. They meet up in the Yan'an Soviet in the Shanxi province.
I mean, when you said long march, I was like, okay, how long? Like a month?
Yeah.
Not that long.
A year.
Jeez. Fuck that. Sounds terrible.
It was terrible. They started with 100,000. Only around 7,000 to 8,000 of them survived.
That's really bad.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
It was super harsh. They're fighting battles. They're starving. And I mean, like, they're going through, it's like the breakdown of conflicts in stories, man versus man.
Yeah.
But it's also man versus environment. Probably at a lot of times for me anyway, going through that would be man versus self.
Yeah, what the fuck am I doing on this long ass march?
Yeah, so terrible conditions. But the bigger consequence for Mao here is that he comes out of this definitely as the undisputed leader of the Communist Party.
Alrighty.
He's not like got supreme power. He's just like the most esteemed.
He's their
person.
guy.
Yeah. After the march, from 1935 to 1936, their troops, Mao's troops, stay in Yan'an, and they're kind of redistributing and farming the land. They're offering medical treatment to the people who live there. They're starting literacy programs. They're helping the people.
Man, all that same shit. Love it.
Yeah. They also give interviews to some Western reporters, and this is where Mao first kind of breaks on to the international scene.
Oh, okay.
Gives an interview to Edgar Snow, who writes a book called Red Star Over China.
Ooh, okay.
Gives an interview to Agnes Smedley, and both of these people, kind of publicize the story of the communists in China, telling people like what they're doing. And it's a little bit romanticized, it's a little bit like, oh, here are these hero revolutionaries, these, common people, how stories can be about.
Like they're underdogs.
Yeah. In July 1937, while Mao and the Red Army are in the Yan'an Soviet there, something happens. A border dispute between nationalist China, so where the Kuomintang control, and the Japanese.
Oh, okay.
The Japanese occupied puppet state of Manchukuo, which is in Manchuria. So think northeast.
Northeast,
China. There's a border dispute there that ends up erupting into an all-out war.
Ooh, okay.
The Japanese invade, and this kicks off something called the Second Sino-Japanese War.
Okay.
And so the Japanese invade, and Mao thought, okay, something's got to be done. I mean, we're sitting over here hanging out, biding our time, trying to get ready to fight again. Mm-hmm. But meanwhile, Japan's invading. We got to do something about that.
Yeah, fuck that.
The Red Army, we're not that powerful yet. We can't really do that alone. Mm-hmm. So he sends a message to the nationalists. And he says, maybe we got to team up.
Let's try it again.
Yeah, so this is actually kind of funny. Their leader, Chiang Kai-shek, remember?
Yeah, that guy.
Kind of a jerk.
Yeah.
He tries to ignore the message. He's just like, I'm not gonna respond. But he gets arrested. One of his generals arrests him and says, no, bitch, you're going to respond to this message.
That's amazing. He was just being petty.
Yeah, and he was like, no, hold this meeting. We're getting invaded by the Japanese. We need some help.
Yeah, okay.
So he does. He holds the meeting, and they agree that they're going to have an alliance, the Second United Front.
All right, one more again. Let's try it.
So that's in December 1937.
Okay.
Personal life break. During the Long March, He Zhizhen, Mao's wife, had been wounded, got some shrapnel to the head I guess they bandaged it up or something and just like kept going, because once they're done with the long march, she ends up having to travel to Moscow for medical treatment.
Wow.
Now, I don't know what went on between them before this, because she stays for 10 years. I don't imagine you go on a trip for 10 years without having talked about it.
Wow.
So she ends up staying for 10 years. And in the meantime, not 10 years into it, but like a year into it, Mao ends up courting a lady named Jiang Qing in 1938.
Okay.
He does bother to divorce He Zhizhen
Okay. He learned a
before he
little.
marries her. Yeah. Another kind of age difference there of 45 to 24.
Okay, yeah. Maybe he was just his daddy.
Yeah, could be. Listeners who have watched the Adam Curtis documentary Can't Get You Out of My Head may recognize Jiang Qing as one of the main characters that follows in that. During the war with the Japanese, the Red Army ends up growing like crazy.
Okay.
And they're really helping to fight to drive the Japanese invaders out, right?
Yeah.
Meanwhile, Mao himself is still in Yan'an. He's kind of doing, just coordinating the whole thing from there. Mm-hmm. He's writing texts designed for his troops, like to educate them in Marxist theory.
Oh, cool.
He writes a pamphlet about war tactics, another one about his plans for China afterward, titled New Democracy.
Ooh, okay.
Now, New Democracy is something I wanted to talk about.
All right, what is it?
Well, we briefly and poorly mentioned it in our thing about different tendencies, and when we talked about Maoism.
Okay, yeah, that was a long time ago.
Yeah, and I didn't do a good job.
Boo.
So what it means really is it's Mao's theory that there are 4 revolutionary social classes in China that should work together to bring about a revolution that accomplishes both the bourgeois revolution, the democratic revolution, right? Mm-hmm. And the socialist revolution at the same time.
That sounds great. I mean, we're always trying to skip a step here. Usually doesn't work out, but that's fine.
Cut a corner, right? So the classes are the peasantry. That's his big addition, right? The peasantry, the proletariat, so the urban working class, the petty bourgeoisie, and the national bourgeoisie.
Okay, there's like people who work for the state?
Well, people who are Chinese, who are like, they're not working for a foreign corporation.
Okay.
They're not for like foreign national companies.
Okay.
Their capital is within China.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah. I thought it was interesting because it's a distinct path that China would, he argues that it's going to be a distinct path that China would take toward democracy. Not like the 2 stages, like we said, but just boom, jump right to it. Feudalism, womp, socialism.
I mean, that sounds good.
Yeah. The thing about the classes, kind of weird. The idea is that the classes, even though they disagree, kind of like the communists disagree with the Kuomintang, they're going to, they're both getting fucked over enough by feudalism, by imperialism, that they can work together enough to overthrow that. And he says, hopefully, as long as the party is, and the working class is in the driver's seat, then later we can settle the antagonisms with class struggle, but hopefully like tame class struggle, because we are ultimately in charge. They won't want to fuck with us.
I kind of like that. I mean, I think just getting people on board with being anti-imperialist is pretty important. And like, I feel like we could use that first step.
Yeah. I think it definitely has appeal, especially when you're talking about countries that don't have a very highly developed capital system, So that's New Democracy. He wrote about that during his time in the Yan'an Soviet.
Okay.
Yan'an was also the site of something called the Yan'an Rectification Movement.
All right, what's that?
This happens from 1942 to 1945, and it's interesting.
All right. Half this podcast is me being like, what's that?
That's the listeners. That's what they're thinking, too. So the Yan'an movement is an ideological program. And it's a way for Mao to get everybody in the party on the same page ideologically.
All right.
Giving them a basic course in Marxist-Leninist theory, and making sure they don't have any, from his perspective, kind of dumbass misconceptions.
Okay.
In practice, it does seem to have meant that Mao kind of made sure that people saw things his way.
Yeah, yeah.
It ends up, and it starts and ends up really intense.
Okay.
It's partially an ideological boot camp. Okay, because they are getting tons of new recruits, people pouring in. Damn, the communists have this area. They're cool. I want to be like them. I'm gonna join up. I'm gonna fight for freedom. They got all these new recruits, and Mao wants to make sure that these guys aren't, stupid when it comes to ideology. That they're not like, yeah, we're fighting so that we can all own land and make the peasants work for us, right?
Yeah, yeah. You gotta make sure you're here for the right reasons.
Yeah, and so he's. It's kind of an indoctrination thing. He wants to, kind of like in a boot camp or something. Here's what's right. Do this. Here's what's wrong. Don't do that. He's telling them what to believe. Teaching them. Yeah. But new and veteran members alike also had to go through something called struggle sessions.
Okay. I feel like I'm not going to like this.
I don't know. It's interesting. So struggle sessions, at these struggle sessions, you would read the Marxist text or whatever, or read whatever it is that you're learning about. And then you would be encouraged to, in these kind of like groups, in these study groups, you would be encouraged to look at your life and examine how you do things or how you have done things and how you've done things or believed things incorrectly based on these views.
Oh, okay.
So you'd have to do what's called self-criticism.
So it's like a confession.
Kinda, yeah. People would put pressure on you and they would be like, dude, come on, how could you be better?
Wow.
What, old stupid beliefs did you have?
Share with the class.
How could you kind of change that? Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know. On the surface, to me, that right there does not seem, too bad. Everybody fucks up. It's kind of awkward to have to do that publicly, but you do need to, address what you do need to fix things about your life, I guess.
I guess I just don't understand how that would be useful because, I don't know. We talked about this last week. It doesn't really help to grind people down in that way and be like, you were totally wrong. You're a fucking dumbass,
Yeah.
So I'm just surprised that they thought that would be a good tactic, I guess.
Well, it's in some way a good tactic because I guess their argument would be it definitely, embarrasses you into not doing it again, I guess.
It's shame-based, which is not my thing.
Yeah. Of course, it does kind of get out of control.
Okay.
It doesn't just stop there. Mao seems to, in addition, kind of have used this not just to teach and improve, but to bring people into line and to purge dissenters and rivals in the party.
Okay. Yeah.
So, if he was kind of playing different groups off each other too, because he has kind of his position and there are people who are more radical than him and there are people who are more conservative than he is. So he's got these different groups and he would be like, okay, we do need to do some self-criticism here. What do you think you guys how could you change? How do you think they could change? Talk shit about them. Okay. All right. Now, how do you guys, how could you change? What do you think they could, and so he's playing them off each other and kind of making them confess to what the other groups had said bad about them.
Okay. So they're narking on each other.
Well, yeah, except just out in the open, just
wow.
They would be like, you're bullshit because whatever, right? And then he would be like, you're right. Please confess to whatever it was, right? And so you'd have to kind of admit all these faults, which in itself isn't bad, but
But then there would be consequences.
There could be consequences if it was bad enough or further down the line. Mao kind of liked to do this where he would just, take that knowledge and just file that away for later.
That's not great. Yeah.
It gets crazy and people end up getting killed.
That sucks. Okay, yeah. I mean, shocker, when you have a shame-based confessional session, things turn catty and then violent. Like, no
Yeah.
shit. If you get people in a room, be like, can you please, put all your shit in the open and talk shit about each other?
Yeah.
Of course it's going to break bad.
Yeah, and in addition, he had a guy who goes on to be kind of like a secret police guy. Those guys are always lovely. And he's going around like really amping this up and getting like forced confessions from people and stuff. And
this is going to be my strike too.
yeah, this is bad. Mao and the party ultimately kind of rein it in late 1944, and things kind of settled down. But Mao and the party also kind of saw this overall as a success in terms of solidifying his power and in terms of unifying the party.
Great.
So this tactic of struggle sessions will be applied later.
Damn it.
This is kind of a template.
They should have done some fucking self-criticism on this.
Well, from their point of view, it accomplished what they wanted to do. It was bloody. And eventually they have to be like, no, we took it too far. Sorry. But the initial fervor of it helped them. Helped their goal anyway. Leadership. I don't think it would help overall. I think it's kind of more fear-inducing.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, you want to try to include people in this so that they can find, like, I don't have a problem with the self-criticism part on a certain level of like, hey, look at your life and see how you can apply these things, instead of look at your life and see how you fucked up and how you should be punished for that.
Right.
Like there's a difference.
Yeah, I agree with that.
There's a way to bring people, it's like the whole like calling out versus calling in. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's that.
Yeah, for sure. And beyond the struggle session part, which, I agree with your line on that. Just the indoctrination part, I mean, probably do that. Like,
yeah.
I mean, if you think about it in an American context, if we had some, if we were trying to recruit yahoos from wherever, to some revolutionary movement out in the countryside, like, you would have to do some teaching.
Yeah.
You'd have to do some teaching in the city, anywhere.
I mean, that's what we're fucking trying to indoctrinate you right now, so.
Yeah. So wherever you are, you would have to engage in that. I think that's probably smart,
Yeah, I think that's fine. I don't have a problem with it.
Yeah, but the dark side is what they would need to not do.
Yeah. Room for improvement.
Anyway, eventually, the Alliance defeats the Japanese.
Okay.
And pretty much immediately after that, gloves come off, back to the Civil War.
My God, you guys.
Like, as soon as, probably before, they're already planning, like, we're almost done with the Japanese, let's get ready. Civil War Part 2.
Gosh, okay, guys.
And so this time you've got, Kuomintang versus the communists. Mm-hmm. And of course, now that they have been sort of involved, helping both sides to defeat the Japanese, the Soviet Union and the good old USA get involved in terms of helping with supplies and shit.
Oh dear, I'm pretty sure I know where those chips fall.
Yeah, they are with.
Oh well, I mean, U.S. went for Kuomintang.
Yep.
And yeah, obviously.
And the Soviets help out their friends, the communists.
Yeah.
The Red Army has now become the People's Liberation Army.
Cool name.
That's its name to this day. The Chinese armed forces are called the People's Liberation Army.
Okay.
Eventually, thanks to their strategy of the People's War and the utter corruption of the nationalist forces, like, these dudes are stealing everything that isn't nailed down. They are just like warlording it up pretty much.
Okay, yeah.
The communists, the People's Liberation Army, ends up victorious.
Nice.
It's long and complicated. I don't care about it too much in terms of details.
Yeah, whatever.
But what's important is that eventually the nationalists are defeated. It's a bloody and a brutal conflict. There's lots of military and there's lots of civilian casualties.
Oh, okay.
But eventually the Kuomintang are defeated and they have to flee to the island of Taiwan in 1949.
Interesting.
That's where you get the People's Republic of China, mainland China. Mm-hmm. And you have Taiwan calling itself the Republic of China.
Huh, okay.
That's where you get those differences. Yeah. And so,
Okay.
I mean, you can piss somebody off and call, like, each one a different, you can,
the
terminology, you can make everybody mad. So, I was reading about that for too long at some point and was like, man. So anyway, that's how the Civil War ended.
Okay.
All right. So with the Civil War over, with the communists victorious, they were able to, on October the 1st, 1949, Chairman Mao Zedong was able to formally proclaim the founding of the People's Republic of China.
Okay.
In Beijing, in Tiananmen Square.
Alrighty.
So he and the party then were going to, and this is what we'll get into our next episode, trying to radically transform society. They're going to kind of decide on these policies, what they're going to pursue, based on Mao's strategy of the mass line.
Okay, I've heard about this from our Panthers episodes.
Yeah. You want a pop quiz here? You want to summarize kind of what that is?
No pressure. This is basically when you are asking people what they need and then providing it, right? Like you're constantly checking in with the people.
Yes. Great.
Perfect.
Yeah. It's building on that idea of the Vanguard Party from Lenin, right? It's just a way to make sure that they stay connected to the people, you know, and thereby are strengthened. Like you said, you are gathering ideas from the masses, right? You're going out, figuring out what they want. You know, they're like, we hate rent, we need healthcare, whatever, fuck the cops, like whatever they are saying. And you take that and you process it as a party and say, okay, well, how can we make this fit our, you know, how can we put this into our program, make it Marxist, make it part of our ideology, and then, you know, in its refined form, take it back to the people and say, look, we're doing the thing. Yeah, we're going to fight for whatever. And then they're like, damn, that's exactly what we want. How did you know? You know?
How did you know? That's my favorite.
So yeah, so they're more closely linked. You know, they're able to, you're bringing them in. They're able to work with the party, advance the revolution. That's the goal. So
yeah, cool.
Yeah, so they're going to use that idea to get ideas from the people and set about remaking China.
Sounds great.
It's going to have some great moments.
Sounds like it will have some bad ones too.
Yeah, it will.
That's okay. Yeah, I mean, we're up to 2 strikes on this guy, so we'll see.
All right. Well, I know his fate.
Sounds like he's going to get past it. That's okay.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like with this episode and with our upcoming one, we'll take some flack, perhaps from both sides, and hopefully it's good. And we got some listener feedback that was like, kind of cautioning us to think about kind of the times people were living in and stuff. And I appreciated that a lot, because I do think it's easy for us to be like, oh man, he was mean. He killed a guy. Like,
yeah,
you know.
Ooh. Yeah, that was in regards to our Lenin episode. I think that was our listener, Richard, who's this really cool dude. But yeah, I think that's a fair criticism. And yeah. I fully admit to being a weenie, being squeamish about death. So yeah, and it's just a completely different scenario. Like, I've never been in a situation, I'm glad I haven't, where like that would have to be a decision I would make.
Yeah, same. I think I'm more willing to, I don't know. I felt like I was sort of admirable. Lenin's like, look, he got it done, you know, which I feel that way sometimes towards what I'm seeing with Mao, especially in this early part where he's fighting the Civil War, fighting against the Japanese, and really, you know, is kind of an underdog the whole time. So I side with that. I don't know. What's your impression so far? I know we haven't really wrapped up the whole story.
Yeah.
Where are you sitting? You said 2 strikes, but overall, what are your kind of pros, cons, or I don't know how you want to do it.
Yeah. In general, I like them. I like the, I guess the inclusion of the peasants. I think that's cool. Like I said earlier, I think it's kind of elitist to leave them out of it. Like that, I remember reading that part in Marx about like the lumpen proletariat or whatever. And I'm just like, that's not cool. Don't be a dick. Yeah. So yeah, I think it's cool that he like works so closely with people and like basically just set up communes everywhere he went. Like, that's really cool. So I'm into it.
Yeah. All right. Like I said, I mean, I admire that he's taking action, that he is, you know, bringing in so many people to his movement, and I mean, willing to go to war, willing to actually fight it out. And especially given the situation that China's in at that time.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting that he teamed up with those people not once but twice. Did not learn his lesson, but I mean, it worked out in the end, I guess.
I read that as kind of like learned his lesson and knew we have to be ready to fight these guys on day one immediately afterward.
Yeah, I guess that's true. He was ready for it. I bet he won a lot of popularity by pitching in against the Japanese. I bet some people were like, man, that's cool. You didn't keep fighting your own thing.
Yeah, that's probably true, right? It's I don't really like those communists that much, but they helped to fight the Japanese, You probably had people like that. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's very important, I think, to keep in mind all this context, because it's well, why didn't he do it peacefully? Why didn't he get someone elected? Dude, there was no...
There wasn't even a government, really. Yeah. I mean, there was, but it was shitty.
Yeah, so it's not that would have even worked. So I think in this case, it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And that's something, I guess, as leftists who try to, be scientific and not utopian, to keep in mind is that whatever Marxism, whatever leftist project happens in a place is going to be successful if it's tailored to that place, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. So it's just going to look different in different places. And that's all right.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think it's interesting. We were talking earlier about how the new democracy skips that step and it goes straight to let's get rid of imperialism and do socialism.
Yeah.
I was I understand that in this context, it's about kind of skipping over the steps between serfdom and socialism. But for me, I was really focused on the getting rid of imperialism part. For me, I'm I mean, this is kind of if all leftists actually united with let's just say DSA, for example, and we just for a bit put aside all of our fucking stupid Twitter squabbles and got behind one thing.
Yeah, I don't know. There's definitely merit in that because you have more numbers and stuff. But then you also run the danger, I guess, is that you end up with a part of your partnership that is the Kuomintang that you just have to fight immediately afterward.
That's fine. We can fight them later. They're DSA. What are they going to do? Give us a pamphlet?
True.
They're just going to send us more emails.
But that is, yeah, you're right. That is a big deal. Is all throughout all this time you have all these factions that, like you said, do manage to put it aside for long enough to get something done, and here to take power, right? I was thinking about this. It gets a little discouraging because later on we'll start reading about the factions really going at each other and, oh, this guy, he's a right winger. He's a capitalist rotor. This guy is a left wing deviation. This person is too whatever, right? Utopian empiricist. They have all these labels that they can put people on just to say, basically, don't agree with me. And it was kind of discouraging because man, is that actually just what we're doing? We don't really know anything. We just have an opinion and we justify it based on whatever we come up with ideologically. It's all just kind of cover for that. But then I was dude, the capitalists do the same thing.
Yeah.
So the capitalists do the same thing. They're just in charge when they do it. They have, you suck because you're a Republican. You suck because you're a Democrat. You suck because whatever. And you can be moderate or whatever within that. But you get to have that argument from the seat of power. That's pretty nice. I would love to argue with leftists and be damn it, can you believe the Social Democrats are doing this again? When we're in the Marxist party and then we're yeah, but those crazy, Trotskyists. So that would be so cool.
That would be so pleasant to have our frivolous arguments, take place in the context of we're actually okay and not actively dying.
Yeah, getting shit done while we're in governance and arguing over how we're going to do it. And so you're right. What we have to do is find a way to unite to get to that step. And I think...
Yeah, because I mean, I was talking to Kyle the other day and I was it's hilarious that there's these right-wing conspiracy theories about Antifa and stuff. It's we couldn't fucking organize a bake sale right now. It wouldn't happen. We could on a very local level, but not on a national level. We're not fucking there.
Yeah.
And I give DSA shit. I love them and everything. Don't get me wrong. I just we're just not there yet. And that's fine. And hopefully we'll fucking get there.
hopefully. And we can see that there's...
We end every episode like this in mild despair.
Is that any surprise to anyone living
really
in these times? Well, there's the happy ending of taking power in your country in this episode.
Yeah. We'll see how it ends
episode, not quite as pleasant. It does end with a death.
Okay. Well, yeah, if you're covering somebody's life and he's already dead, yeah. If he's born in 18 whatever, yeah, I think we're going to get to his death.
Yeah.
It'd be weird if we didn't. Some say he's still out there.
Yeah, he's still out there long marching to this day. If there's any example here, I guess we can leave parts of it aside. We don't have to do struggle sessions, but it is good to build a broad coalition to get stuff done,
Yeah, I got enough struggles without needing... That's what therapy is. That's a struggle session.
Therapy, but it's public, and there
sounds terrible.
Are other people there, and yeah.
Not for me. Okay. Okay. Well, I'm excited to get to part 2.
Yeah, it'll be fun. It's basically already researched. I'm sure I'll add like 3 more pages to it or something before then.
God. Try to keep it down. We don't want to have to go to part 3.
We won't.
Okay,
but in our defense of a two-party here, Mao was a communist revolutionary, like in the Communist Party, longer than Lenin was alive. So
this makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, in the meantime, you can find us on the internet. We are on Twitter at teachcommunism, Instagram at teachmecommunism. Oh, by the way, on Twitter, I did share that picture of the cat that we saw in last week's recording.
Awesome.
I came up with a great name for her the other day and I forgot it. I'm so mad about it. I know.
No.
Well, it was one of those things I came up with in the middle of the night and I didn't want to like look at my phone and get awake,
Yeah.
So I was like, I'll just remember it.
That sucks. Yeah. That never succeeds for me. I never remember anything that I try to remember in bed.
Me either. You can send us an email, teachmecommunism@gmail.com. You can send us a question there for a future episode, for a future Q&A, or if you're like, hey, you should do an episode about this, let us know.
Yeah.
You can also leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. That is a great way to help people find the show. Even if you're not an Apple user, you can still leave a review. Do that, please. It'd be great.
We'll read it. We'll love it. We'll pin it on our wall.
I love it so much. I read all of them all the time, except for the bad ones. Anyway, we are on YouTube if you prefer to listen to podcasts that way. And we have a Patreon, patreon.com/teachmecommunism. For $5 a month, you get access to our notes. I'm assuming these notes are very beefy, considering you told me the page count earlier and I made a big face.
They're crazy. Yeah.
So we'll release part 1 of Grady's big old notes file this week. And again, $5 a month, you get access to not just that, but all of our notes for previous episodes. I literally use these notes to answer like frequently asked questions people send in on Twitter, so I don't have to remember things. Like, I'll just like Command F that shit.
That's good. I'll start making like fill in the blank versions for you to ride along with as we go.
Oh, no, don't make me work for it.
It'll help you retain more of the knowledge.
Well, one time I tried taking notes and it was too keyboard clacky. I didn't like it. I didn't like having to edit that out.
Yeah, no thanks.
Oh, and the funds from Patreon at the end of the year go to a local mutual aid fund. We actually just donated again to Feed the People Dallas because of the recent storms in Texas. But yeah, we'll keep doing that as we get some more money in.
Yeah. And, budding revolutionaries out there, if you happen to establish a Soviet somewhere in the United States, we'll, come with our Patreon funds at the ready. So
please save me. Okay, I think that's all the internet I've got for you. So I think we're done, right?
Yeah. Thanks for being a good student, listening and asking the right questions.
Thanks for doing all this fucking research and for I feel like I don't know if this is accurate, but your pronunciation sounded good to me, but I have no idea.
Some of them are pretty decent and some of them are my best effort. I'm partially operating on kind of rules that I pick up from other names, but I don't know if it.
We're doing our best.
Yeah, I try. I don't want to fuck up, but I'm not very familiar with Chinese, so.
Well, thanks for putting in the work.
Thanks. All right, listeners, you can catch us next week for another episode of Teach Me Communism, where the class struggle is always in session.
Bye, y'all.
Bye.